I never thought a simple phrase would save my career and change my boss's entire perspective. If you've ever felt underestimated or judged unfairly at work, this story might just give you the words you need when it matters most. Like, subscribe, and join me on this journey that transformed not just my workplace, but my relationship with my daughter. Marcus Jenkins stared at the email notification blinking on his phone screen, his heart sinking as he read the subject line, "Urgent, meeting with HR, 9 a.m. tomorrow." The fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway suddenly seemed too bright, too harsh. He slipped the phone back into the pocket of his scrubs and glanced at his watch, 3:17 a.m. For more hours until his shift ended, and then he'd have exactly 1 hour to go home, shower, change, drop his daughter Lily at school, and make it to this meeting that could very well end his career. As a nurse in the pediatric intensive care unit, Marcus had dedicated the past 8 years to caring for the most vulnerable patients at Memorial Hospital. After losing his wife Claire to cancer 3 years ago, his work had become both his anchor and his purpose, second only to raising their now 7-year-old daughter. The thought of losing this job sent a wave of panic through him that he couldn't afford to entertain, not with a critically ill patient just behind the door he was standing in front of. The meeting with HR wasn't entirely unexpected. His new supervisor, Victoria Winters, had made it clear from her first day 6 months ago that she found his situation problematic. His situation being that he was a single father who occasionally needed flexibility with his schedule. Despite never missing a shift and always finding coverage when Lily was sick, Victoria seemed determined to document every instance when Marcus's phone lit up with a text from his daughter's school or babysitter. "3 strikes and you're out, Jenkins," she had warned him last week after catching him glancing at his phone during a staff meeting. Hospital policy clearly states personal devices should be put away during work hours. "Peek one more time and you're fired." The morning of the HR meeting arrived with the chaotic energy that defined Marcus's life as a single parent. Lily had spilled orange juice on her favorite dress, insisted on wearing it anyway, then dissolved into tears when Marcus gently explained why that wasn't possible. By the time he dropped her off at school, 10 minutes late, his carefully pressed shirt had a smudge of peanut butter on the sleeve, and his tie was slightly crooked. "I love you, Lilipad," he called as she ran toward the school entrance. "Have a great day." She turned, her backpack bouncing, and blew him a kiss before disappearing through the doors. That small gesture gave him the courage he needed to face whatever was coming next. The HR office was sterile and unwelcoming, with motivational posters that felt more like mockery than inspiration. Victoria sat with perfect posture beside Diane from HR, a folder of documentation spread before them. Marcus recognized some of the papers, written warnings about his excessive phone checking, despite the fact that he only ever looked at messages from Lily's school or their elderly neighbor who sometimes watched her. "Mr. Jenkins," Diane began, her voice professionally neutral. "We've asked you here today to discuss some concerns about your performance and adherence to hospital policies." Victoria jumped in before Diane could continue. "To be blunt, your personal life is interfering with your professional responsibilities. We've documented 17 instances in the past month where you were observed checking your personal phone during work hours." Marcus felt his face grow warm. "I understand the policy, but as I've explained to Ms. Winters, I'm the only parent my daughter has. I need to be reachable in case of emergencies." "The hospital has a main line for emergencies," Victoria countered. "Your constant checking of your phone shows a lack of commitment to your patients and this institution." Something in her tone, the dismissive way she reduced his parenting to an inconvenience, sparked a calm clarity in Marcus. He wasn't going to apologize for being a father. "With all due respect," he said, his voice steady, "I've never once neglected a patient. My performance reviews before Ms. Winters arrived were exemplary. I check my phone during appropriate breaks, between patient rounds, or when I'm completing paperwork, never during direct patient care." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Policy is policy, Mr. Jenkins. We can't make exceptions just because of your situation." Marcus took a deep breath before responding. My situation, as you call it, is that I'm both a dedicated nurse and a devoted father. Those aren't competing priorities, they're complementary parts of who I am. The compassion I show my patients comes from the same place as the love I have for my daughter. He turned to Diane. I understand the importance of policies, but I also believe in the hospital's mission statement about valuing work-life balance and supporting staff well-being. If checking my phone occasionally to ensure my child is safe makes me a liability, then perhaps this isn't the right environment for me anymore. The room fell silent. Diane looked uncomfortable, glancing between Marcus and Victoria. Finally, she cleared her throat. Perhaps we should discuss some reasonable accommodations, she suggested. The hospital does have protocols for staff with caregiving responsibilities. Victoria began to protest, but Diane held up a hand. Actually, I'm concerned about the way this situation has been handled. Mr. Jenkins has an outstanding record, and his patient satisfaction scores are among the highest in the department. What followed was a tense but productive conversation about communication protocols. By the end, they had agreed that Marcus could keep his phone on vibrate in his pocket during shifts, checking it only during appropriate breaks, and the charge nurse would immediately relay any urgent messages from Lily's school. As the meeting concluded, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He hadn't been fired. In fact, Diane had suggested they review the phone policy hospital-wide to better accommodate staff with family responsibilities. Victoria, however, was clearly displeased with the outcome. As they left the HR office, she pulled Marcus aside in the hallway. You may have won this round, Jenkins, but I'll be watching you closely, she warned. One slip-up and we'll be right back in that office. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her for the first time, and saw something he hadn't noticed before, exhaustion, and perhaps a hint of vulnerability behind her harsh exterior. I understand, he replied calmly. But I hope instead of watching for my mistakes, you might take the time to see what I actually contribute to this unit. My daughter has made me a better nurse, not a worse one. Victoria seemed taken aback by his response, but before she could reply, her own phone rang. She glanced at it, her expression changing instantly from stern to concerned. I need to take this, she said, already turning away. It's my mother's nursing home. Of course, Marcus replied. Family comes first. Those 3 words seemed to hang in the air between them as Victoria answered the call, her professional demeanor cracking slightly as she listened to whatever news was being delivered. When she hung up, she looked disoriented, vulnerable in a way Marcus had never seen before. Everything okay? He asked gently. Victoria hesitated. My mother, she fell this morning. They're sending her to the ER for evaluation. Go, Marcus said without hesitation. I'll cover the unit meeting and let Dr. Patel know you had a family emergency. But the policy, she began. Sometimes policies need to bend for the people they're meant to serve, Marcus replied. Go be with your mother. I've got things covered here. The look of surprise and reluctant gratitude on Victoria's face told Marcus everything he needed to know. This wasn't about phones or policies, it was about humanity, about recognizing that everyone had responsibilities and loves beyond the hospital walls. Victoria's mother's fall marked the beginning of a subtle but significant shift in their working relationship. Over the following weeks, Marcus noticed Victoria making efforts to better understand the challenges faced by staff with family responsibilities. She still maintained high standards, but there was a new flexibility in her approach. One evening, as Marcus was preparing to leave after his shift, Victoria appeared in the break room doorway. Jenkins, she said, her tone businesslike but lacking its former edge. Got a minute? Marcus nodded, setting down his bag. Of course. Victoria closed the door behind her, an uncharacteristic sign of seeking privacy. I owe you an apology, she said, the words clearly difficult for her. I've been unfair in my assessment of your work, and I've been inflexible regarding your responsibilities as a parent. Marcus was stunned into silence, which Victoria seemed to take as an invitation to continue. My mother has early-stage dementia, she explained. I've been her primary caregiver for the past 2 years, trying to keep her at home as long as possible. The nursing home was a last resort when I couldn't manage anymore. Understanding dawned on Marcus. That's why you took this position, regular hours, no night shifts. Victoria nodded. I thought I was hiding it well, keeping my personal life separate from work. I was so focused on proving I could handle everything perfectly that I couldn't see the hypocrisy in how I was treating you. We're all just doing our best, Marcus offered. Caregiving is hard, whether it's for children or parents. The thing is, Victoria continued, I've been reviewing your work more carefully these past few weeks. Your patient care is exceptional. The way you connect with the children, how you support their parents through difficult decisions, it's clear that being a father has made you a better nurse, not a distraction from your duties. The validation, especially coming from Victoria, meant more to Marcus than he could express. Thank you for seeing that, he said simply. I'm implementing some changes to the unit policies, Victoria announced. We're creating a more formal protocol for staff with caregiving responsibilities, children, elderly parents, disabled family members. Clear guidelines for emergency communications that don't compromise patient care but recognize the reality of our lives outside these walls. Marcus couldn't help but smile. That would make a real difference for a lot of people here. Your words that day, about compassion coming from the same place, they stayed with me, Victoria admitted. I've been thinking about them every time I check my phone for updates about my mother. 6 months later, Memorial Hospital's pediatric ICU was featured in a healthcare journal for its innovative staff support policies. The article highlighted how accommodating caregiving responsibilities had actually improved patient outcomes, reduced staff turnover, and increased overall job satisfaction. Victoria and Marcus were photographed together for the piece, standing side by side in the unit they now co-managed after Victoria's promotion to Director of Nursing. The day the article was published, Marcus brought Lily to the hospital's Family Day celebration. She proudly wore a t-shirt that read, "My dad saves lives," and charmed everyone she met, including Victoria, who had become something of an honorary aunt to her. "Daddy," Lily asked as they walked through the hospital garden during the celebration, "are you still going to get fired if you look at your phone?" Marcus laughed, lifting her onto his shoulders. "No, Lillipad. Actually, now I'm supposed to check my phone sometimes, just to make sure you're okay." "That's good," she declared with 7-year-old certainty. "Because I send you a lot of important messages." "The most important messages in the world," he agreed. From across the garden, Victoria watched their interaction with a smile. She pulled out her own phone to check on her mother, who was now living with her instead of in the nursing home. The new flexibility in her work schedule had made that possible, an unexpected benefit of the changes she'd implemented after that pivotal conversation with Marcus. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest truths, spoken calmly in moments of crisis. For Marcus, for Victoria, and for the entire hospital community, one father's gentle insistence that family and work could strengthen rather than diminish each other had created ripples that continue to spread, touching lives in ways none of them could have imagined. As Marcus looked around at his colleagues enjoying the day with their families, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led to something beautiful, a workplace that recognized the full humanity of its staff, that understood that the love they carried for their families made them better at caring for others, not worse. And it had all started with a calm reply in a moment when anger or defensiveness might have seemed more natural. Sometimes, the most powerful response isn't a raised voice or a clever argument, but a simple truth spoken from the heart. If you've ever felt torn between your professional responsibilities and your personal ones, remember Marcus's story. Sometimes standing firmly in your truth, with compassion rather than confrontation, can change not just your own circumstances, but create a better environment for everyone around you. Like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories that might just give you the words you need when facing your own challenges, and remember that the love you have for your family isn't a liability, It's your greatest strength.